He's been on the phone forever.
Yeah.
Can you hear what he's saying? Because it sounds pretty unsavory.
Yeah, hold on.
So 7.6 billion? Really? I mean, that is a lot of people, but... Okay, what's half of that? See, it just sounds a lot more manageable, don't you?
What?
Well, yeah, if only there was something to do. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, Marjorie. Yes, go ahead and send my regards to the Census Bureau. Thank you so much.
What the
Census
fuck?
Bureau.
Why was he talking to Butter? Oh my god.
Sorry that I was late. I was just on the phone. One of the people from the Census Bureau called me and said that they wanted to, I don't know, ask me some questions or something, and then I had some questions for them. So I'm just fascinating stuff, really.
All right,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. No questions on this end.
7.6 billion censuses, huh?
People.
Oh.
7.6 billion
No,
people on
yeah.
the planet.
All right. So,
Man, these stones are so shiny.
The last time we were talking, guys, we were thinking about what the future might hold for the MCU. And we kind of talked about like where we think it might go with the superhero films, whether we're in the middle of this boom and it's just going to keep going and it's going to get better and it's going to keep earning more money, or if that bubble's going to burst and we're going to people are going to lose interest. And I think it's interesting. My thought on this is that I think we've all made good points on, as long as they're making good films, it's going to continue.
Sure.
As it should continue. And, I mean, Marvel is really knocking it out of the park right now. I think that Fox has some interesting ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they get it with, like, Deadpool.
Yeah.
Deadpool 2 is coming out soon.
Logan.
Logan
Yeah.
was phenomenal. And then even with some of their X-Men movies, they're about half and half on, like, they either make it, and it like, it hits right. It's, like, a good storyline. The characters are well written. And then there's other times where it's like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why this came out the way that it did. Sony, has their deal with Marvel now, and so we get Spider-Man, but then they're also doing their weird, like, we're making Spider-Man villain movies with Venom, and then there's another movie it's like called Black and Silver, and it's about the Black Cat and Silver Sable. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, those are interesting ideas, and like they're taking things in a place that were never imagined, but at the same time, like, how do you make a superhero, how do you make a comic book movie without mentioning the reason that any of those characters exist? Spider-Man.
That would be, that'd be like making a Riddler Two-Face movie without being able to mention, like, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Jim Gordon, or GCPD, because those were owned by something else. Like, what a weird thing.
So I think the future will prove interesting going forward. What I think should happen more than anything, it's something that I found an article written by Mark Bernardin, who is he's a writer for The Hollywood Reporter. That's where this came from. He is the co-host of Fat Man on Batman with Kevin Smith. They have for the last several years. That show has kind of evolved from what it originally started as. And so he is now the co-host, and he's a really great writer. He's written for the LA Times. He's written for Entertainment Weekly way back when. And his article is titled, "To Save the Future, Marvel Studios Must Forget Its Past." And basically what it states is something that I really think needs to happen as well to keep all of this fresh, because I think that's where it's going to start. The fatigue is going to fall, is when these comic book movies start feeling like they're cookie cutter, like they're the same thing over and over again. Mark says that in order for this to continue to be successful, basically we have, in the original phase, we had 5 movies about 4 heroes featuring a couple others like Hawkeye and Black Widow, and those built to the Avengers. And then in phase 2, we kind of knocked all of those heroes down, and then they all had to come together again to fight off a threat to the Earth that was built by one of their own. And so they had to come together again and do that. Then the Civil War happens, and it breaks them apart even more. And then we've added more heroes into the mix over the last few years, and then they've had the biggest event in their history, in the 10 years of the MCU, and that's the Infinity War. And that comes from an outside threat who's been watching all of this. But 10 years in, we are now at the point of, like, if I take my mom to go see the Infinity War, she's not going to understand anything that's going on because she hasn't watched Iron Man and Captain America and Guardians of the Galaxy. And there may be some of those movies where she would really like them, There may be some of those movies where she has no interest in seeing. And so it's hard to get the full story without watching all of it.
You know, that's an interesting point that I had not thought about. Because, like, it does the same thing for me. It's why I haven't seen a single episode of Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. Because I know that now to catch up, like, you can't just start in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And that's
right.
How long of, worth of, and it's the same with comic books. That's why, like, I mean, anybody who's listened to me talk about comic books knows my favorites are either graphic novels or when I can get them volumized so that I don't have to wait for each issue, because eventually I go, I'd love to read Batman, but how do you pick up in the middle? What if you picked up in the middle of Metal? You'd have no idea what was going on. Fortunately, Metal's a small enough arc, but, like, what if you picked up in the middle of the Infinity War, or you picked up in the middle of like Crisis on Infinite Earths, or any of these big deals? It's really kind of hard. So I think that's why I said in our last issue, my hope would be they're just going to kind of, I don't want to say reboot, there's no reason to reboot, begin a new story that you don't need the previous stories to. And maybe you might miss a nod. There are some of these films I have yet to see.
Right.
I haven't seen Guardians 2. I haven't seen Ragnarok. I'm sure I missed nods. But I was also like, I know the gist of what's going on. Even if it's that level, I think it's fine. But I do see that point entirely. They've really got to watch what they build.
Yeah, if this guy's going where I think he's going, I think I agree with him, but go ahead.
So Mark continues by saying, and he's said it, I've heard him in episodes of Fat Man on Batman, who he said that Marvel has done an amazing thing in that they have taught moviegoers how to be comic book readers.
Yeah.
And the reason he says that is that comic book readers go into it knowing that there is continuity that has gone on for, in some cases, 70 to 80 years. Mm. And so some things you're going to pick up immediately, and some things you're going to have to go, okay, what is he talking about here? Oh, I need to go back to this issue of this arc to get this? Okay, and then you'll either go do it or you won't. But what Marvel Studios and Disney has done is teach moviegoers who don't read comics, they don't care anything about this, but they like these MCU, these superhero movies. They will go and go, oh, well, yeah, I have to watch Thor Ragnarok to see what Doctor Strange was doing after the Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
Or if I watch Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange shows up and it's just like, well, who is that guy? And what building are they in right now? And so then you go back and it makes them want to watch Doctor Strange.
It's like a cinematic reading order of sorts, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it has made people who actually pay attention to those things. They will pay attention to continuity and care and want to do these things. And so what he's saying is that now that we have done that and they have trained these people to do that over and over and over again, and we have built to the biggest event of a cinematic universe that we've ever seen, is that going forward after Avengers 4, we need to make a drastic change, and they need to start making singular movies again.
Yeah.
Not worry about big events.
Yeah.
They need to start caring about telling character stories and have some intermingling within those movies.
Yeah.
In the same case of like Tony Stark showing up in Spider-Man Homecoming, or Doctor Strange and the Hulk showing up in Thor Ragnarok. Goddamn everyone except those people that I just mentioned showing up in Civil War. Mm-hmm. Like, have these movies where they can intertwine, but it doesn't have to be this huge like
build up and
exactly.
Yeah, that's actually my exact thought is that pretty much everything up to Infinity War has been sort of a setup to this cinematic universe, and now all they really have to do is just write stories within this universe. They don't really have to do any more setup or phases, I guess. They can just release, like, just for an example, if they get Fox, they're just like, here's a Fantastic Four movie. There's no real ties to anything else. Just here's a Fantastic Four story.
It's why Fantastic Beasts as a movie works, because it's set in the Harry Potter universe, but they had 8 movies to just movies, not books, but they had 8 movies to establish that universe and the things that can happen, or the different verbiage and lifestyle that these
the aesthetic.
Yeah, and so the spin-off of that works because they assume you've seen. But if you go into Fantastic Beasts, you get confused. What are these words? Who is this person? Et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like I see your point where that works for now.
Because then it's like,
does that work have an expiration date?
Yeah,
Right.
I think ultimately they're going to have to, I don't want to say start over, but just like comic books where we now have a universe that we understand, the reason Civil War worked in the comic books is because there was a year-long event, lead up. And then they did Civil War. And when they were done, they didn't go, all right, now we do Civil War 2. They went, okay, well, back to storytelling, guys. They resolved the big issue. Back to your regular scheduled programming until the next crisis or event happens. And then the big crisis level event that goes on has had time to build. I think it's time for them to, this thing gets resolved, start, your one-offs again, like you just said, Dylan, and then eventually get into, oh shit, what's the new big overarching thing? I mean, how many times did we see Thanos' face before this film happened?
Right. And I think that with the statements that Kevin Feige has made about the MCU going forward after Avengers 4,
right,
it being a different universe, it's going to make changes. Avengers 4 is going to have some lasting changes.
Cool.
And I hope that means something along these lines, that they're going to stop focusing so much on these larger pictures and just tell cool stories within the universe that they've built. And not that it just means that, a couple of our original Avengers are going to die and then these new people are going to take over as the Avengers. We all know that that's going to happen.
Right.
Whether it's storyline-wise or whether it's these actors, their contracts have gone up.
I'm right back to where I was. I'm still worried that they're going to kill off Cap or kill off Iron Man.
Now, but I don't think they're going to kill either of them.
I don't think they should. I think they should just
I think it'd be
them.
stupid because I think they'd upset a lot of people. I think, at least with Tony, they've set up a good reason for him to retire. Pepper.
Yep. And I think that's where this is heading.
And Steve Rogers could just disappear because he's still being hunted by the government.
I mean, he could disappear, or he could. I mean, honestly,
I just don't think they're going to kill them.
These two are going to use their AI to now monitor the world and be off somewhere on a tower, whatever the fuck they want to write. I hope
more
they don't
accurately, Captain America gets a pardon and retires with 13, and Tony retires with Pepper and leaves it in the hands of others, and
because they can definitely do that.
Right.
Especially if Captain Marvel shows up in Avengers 4.
But that's kind of where I hope we go for the future, is I hope that we find that medium of let's tell interesting stories again. And not that they haven't, but I feel like these big event movies should be retired for a while.
Yeah.
Like all these phases that we've had, kind of like what you said, Dylan, is like get rid of these phases. Like instead of like 6 movies long, they should be like 12 movies long, like double the length, so that we can tell all of these stories before we get into like the, oh shit, a big thing is happening.
Well, yeah, I think we have to, because realistically, I know it's hard, but I have trouble counting Avengers as one of those. Like the first Avengers movie, yeah, it was a big event that brought them all together, but it didn't have the magnitude or scope of the rest of them. Age of Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War obviously have gotten progressively larger, but to me, that doesn't denote. I realize that on paper, that's the end of their first segment, and the second section is now leading up to Ultron. But to me, that was like Ultron was the first big deal, because it was like solo movies for those 4. Now we bring them all together and we throw in these 2, and like that's, to me, it was like, yeah, okay, we're finally here. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like, holy shit, they're all together. It felt like, yeah, okay, great. Now we've got to the point where they're a team. This is where this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like, oh my god. Ultron, though, you're like, wow, okay, they're talking about a lot of different people, and like there's all kinds of stuff happening. And then by the time you get to Civil War, it's like, oh shit, Black Panther, and like, wow, they're really expanding. And then Infinity War is like, okay, this is everybody you've ever even cameoed is in this fucking movie.
That's just the thing, though, is that as the moviegoer and the Marvel fan that watched them systematically as they released, I have never felt like, oh shit, where the fuck did this come from? Or like, how did we get here? It's even Infinity War, the 30-something heroes we calculated, and it's just going into this, I was like, oh yeah, wow, look, they're finally interacting. It's so great. It's like I've been waiting for it, not wow. And that's where Justice League falters. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why are they all together? Oh, because Mark Zuckerberg had a file on his computer with a bunch of app icons that meant superhero names. So I saw one of those internet memes on Facebook the other day about who would win in a fight between Thanos and Kratos from the series God of War. And in this podcast, we look to talk about all things nerdy. So movies, obviously, but also comics and games. I would say the biggest game that's come out so far this year has been the God of War game that just came out from Santa Monica Studios. It was a Sony exclusive, so it's a PS4. Sony is kicking ass this year. I mean, already they have God of War, which is super high grossing. It's won several awards. It's gotten many 10 out of 10s. And it's one of Sony's first major exclusives out of right now what I can think of 3. Later in the summer, Detroit Become Human comes out. And then towards September, Insomniac Studios is releasing Spider-Man. So Sony's killing it this year. But I think I'm the only one who got God of War and played it. I think I might be the only one who played the rest of the series as well.
On Earth or in this room?
In this room.
Oh,
out of the
thank
people
God.
that survived by Thanos' wrath.
No,
So
I played like the first God of War. I played through all the way.
I'm talking about like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then I watched the gameplay footage from the handheld games.
Oh no, I haven't done that.
Yeah.
The trilogy I was in though.
So specifically about the PS4 game, because I've played it and because, I don't want to give just the standard load-bearing review.
Right.
What I'd like to do instead is something that I lovingly called a game download, where you guys ask me questions and I give you information as opposed to just, me rambling. Speaking of rambling, I'm going to do my best for those of you who are unfamiliar with the God of War series, kind of walk you through major plot points. In Sparta, 2 brothers are born, Deimos and Kratos. Deimos is born with these red birthmarks all over his body and almost like a spiral. And the Sisters of Fate prophesize to the Greek gods that a Spartan born with markings of red would kill them all, essentially. So they kidnap Deimos. Flash forward to adulthood, Kratos is a member of the Spartan army. Kratos, being the main character of the franchise, is a soldier in the Spartan army, and they are being dominated by the barbarians. And so Kratos makes a deal with the Greek god of war, Ares, to best them, to defeat them. He does so, but in giving the power of Ares in these things called the Blades of Chaos, which are chained to Kratos' arms, it gives him great power, but it also, he gets blind with rage, and it gives him, an edge in combat. But Ares, being an asshole in one of these villages that these Roman soldiers are raiding, picks up Kratos' wife and daughter and sets them in this village. So Kratos ends up killing them both. And it's sad. And he is then damned to be basically Ares' lapdog, and he also must wear the ashes of his family on his skin. So he is all white, with in tribute to his brother, he has tattooed red markings all over himself, and he has a skin that is ashen white, and they call him the Ghost of Sparta. And then you kill Ares, and then systematically through the next 3 games, you kill up and up and up your way through the Greek pantheon until finally it's revealed that Zeus is your dad, and then you kill him in 3. That's the way 3 ends. You actually bludgeon him to death with your fists. And so this game takes place many years, we assume, after 3 as passed. And Kratos, in that amount of time, has gone to Midgard, like the Norse cultural Earth. Whether that is just a different, continent or a different realm or a different reality, it's, again, not really discussed. But he is in Midgard, and he has since taken a new wife named Faye, who has passed away from nondescript issues, and the game opens with spoilers for the record. This will be full of spoilers, just because to really get into the nitty gritty, some story details I think will slip out. But Faye dies from nondescript issues. The game begins with Kratos and his son Atreus, and they have cut down a long white tree to carry as a part of a funeral pyre for Kratos' wife Faye. And the entire premise of the game, the plot, is Faye's request is to sprinkle her ashes from the highest peak. Now, Kratos assumes that is the largest mountain in Midgard, so they begin a journey there. And then things happen, and you find out that the highest peak is actually in one of the 9 realms of existence, Midgard being the center. If you're unfamiliar with Norse mythology, some of this might go over your head. I was, and had to do a bit of research, honestly, to kind of really get the references. There is a series of 9 realms the center of which is Midgard, that are branches of the world tree. And Asgard is the land of gods. Helheim is the afterlife of those not going to Valhalla. There's a lot of lore in this, and it really feeds it from that. And it's really well done.
That's cool.
But there is a travel system between realms. And you find out through a supporting character that the highest peak is actually in Jotunheim, which is the realm of giants. And in the realm of giants, it's inaccessible. Odin, being the Allfather of the Aesir gods, hated the giants for reasons that are kind of explained through story tidbits that you get from a supporting character named Mimir telling stories as you row a boat. Every time you row a boat, Mimir tells stories, and you kind of learn about the lore of the land instead of like Dragon Age, which is another game set in kind of a fantastical world, does this really bad. And all of their lore is set in a codex. And you unlock pieces of this fucking codex, and they expect you to stop playing the video game you bought and go and read novellas of literature.
Yeah.
And that's a little frustrating. This game does it very well. So Jotunheim, Land of the Giants, has the highest peak. But Odin, out of revenge against the giants, has taken that bridge, that travel beacon, away. It has vanished. So then part of the game is getting to Jotunheim, but then you've made enemies along the way. And it's this beautiful twisted tale about, like, it really, when it boils down, it's a father and son bonding while trying to sprinkle their mother's ashes, but shit just keeps getting in the way because he's a god and terrible things typically happen to them. Again, see Kratos bludgeoning his father Zeus to death as the climactic ending. And it was a positive ending too, which is the worst part.
It's cathartic.
Yeah, it's like, it felt good. You just mash and B, but it felt good. Well, it's circle, but whatever. So yeah, you guys have questions that you wanted to ask?
When you describe this to me, and from the little bit of gameplay that I've seen, it kind of looks like the relationship that you get with your son is developed in the same way as the gameplay for The Last of Us was, where you have these conversations that kind of happen naturally throughout the game. It's not very cutscene-y. From what I saw, would you say that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, absolutely. There's very rarely cutscenes, and when there are, they're mainly because you're traveling from one area to another in the game that can't be done during gameplay. But most of the relationships with Atreus and Kratos, and then even the two of them with others. For example, the axe that Kratos wields is called the Leviathan, which was made for Faye, who is, you find out later on, is a giantess. In this mythos, they're not necessarily large beings. They are just a species, the Jotun, the giants. Okay. And her name, and you might recognize this immediately or you may not. Her name is Faye in Midgard, but her Jotun name is Laufey. Oh. Which, for those of you who don't know, Laufey was the frost giant king in Thor, but is actually just the monarch of giants in Norse mythology. Right. Does anybody know who Laufey's son is? Loki, the trickster god.
Yeah.
And her son, Laufey's son, in this game is Atreus. And that was, I think, the biggest spoiler, and I'm using this as an example. The biggest spoiler that I have for the game is in the very end, Atreus asks, you get to Jotunheim, you wander the halls, there are several panels of hieroglyphs that basically tell the story of the game, because she had foreseen all of this and told this story to the giants. But Loki is referred to, not Atreus, because she wanted to name him Loki, and Kratos decided Atreus was better, Atreus being a platoon mate of his in the Spartan army that he felt was a better fit for a warrior. So Loki, the god of mischief, is your son Atreus.
That's crazy.
You find that out not in a cutscene. You find that out wandering a hall.
So
big revelations like that happen.
Right.
They go from a kind of estranged father and son to an angry pair of people that aren't getting along to a very close, they're bonding. Atreus is learning, Kratos is proud, to Kratos reveals to Atreus that they are both gods. Atreus gets a big head. He starts to fuck up and do things that are bad. Kratos punishes him. They go back to angry. All of this is just walking or jogging or running or fighting. They have these conversations. So yeah, it's very similar to The Last of Us in that. I haven't played Last of Us, but just based on what you've described it's very similar.
So I guess my follow-up thought for that would be, in Last of Us, it's really sort of dynamic, the things that Ellie does while you control Joel. Obviously, it's kind of the same setup. You're controlling one character, and there's another character that's like kind of following you.
Yeah, sure.
But it looks like Atreus does a lot more like combat that you can control.
So yeah, Atreus's big weapon is, of course, Kratos has the Leviathan axe, and then another spoiler alert: later on in the game, you go back to your homestead. Atreus is ill, and you have to go to Hell in order to save him, but no Vanir or Aesir, which are the two types of Norse gods, none of them can summon fire in Helheim. It's supposed to murder you. It's supposed to freeze you. But Kratos' Blades of Chaos can create fire there. So he goes back to his homestead and pulls his past back out of storage, which he's hidden from this whole time in order to save his son, which is a huge pivotal point. But you pull the Blades of Chaos back out and they become your secondary weapon.
Right.
Which I'm such a big fan of the original series. I just only use the blades at that point. But so you have two weapons, and then you can do like barehanded and shield combat, which is also pretty neat.
Right.
Atreus's big weaponry is he'll do melee things, like he'll stab them or jump on their neck and strangle them, enemies. And then he has a bow, which I'm blanking on the name of. It has a name.
But you can like point and tell him where you want to
Wherever
shoot
the
bow.
reticle is technically aiming, if you hit the square button, yes, he will shoot up to several times.
It sounds pretty dynamic.
And later on you get different arrow types, and those arrow types will have different effects, and so you can cycle through arrows to help better stun or shock enemies. Bringing that into combos with the Blades of Chaos or the Leviathan Axe, it's super dynamic. But then other things happen that are cool, like you'll knock somebody up into the air, and he will fire at them and stick them like a pincushion so that when they fall back down, they're stunned for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. And you build that, of course, in skills and whatnot. But yeah, he's very dynamic. He is very controlled, and he definitely helps Kratos, because Kratos' combat is very Dark Souls-y, but it's not as intense.
No, but it's a lot of dodging and like slow
dodging,
combat.
weaving, slow, timed, combos. But Atreus really takes that to the next level. He makes it way more. You can do cool fucking things with Atreus. You can throw the Leviathan axe. It's returning, so it's like Thor's hammer.
Oh, cool.
Which is actually funny because it was made by two dwarven brothers in the game named Brock and Sindri that are the Norse dwarves that crafted Mjolnir.
That's awesome.
And in the game, they are the ones that crafted Mjolnir, and they're helping you because they think that Thor is, quote, a daft sod, and they want to see you take him down. You don't in the game, but they have crafted Mjolnir, so it returns like that hammer because it's the same magic. Like, you can throw the axe, and depending on where you throw them, different things will happen. If you hit them in the head, they get stunned. If you throw them at their feet, they actually fall down. If you throw the axe and miss and then return it, if it hits people on the way in, they stumble forward.
So the physics works.
So you can do a thing where you can throw the axe at their feet and trip them. As they get back up, return it, have Atreus fire the bow at them a couple times, and then jump on them.
Which is amazing because it really goes back to a way less button mashy and button prompty, but it still keeps the combo idea from the first three,
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is really cool.
Especially with the blades. You can't just keep heading. He runs out of combo.
Right.
But if you're bad at the game, yeah, you could just hit square a bunch of times.
Right.
Okay, so in the storyline that you kind of laid out for us, seems very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But where does this fall? Genre-wise, where does this game fall?
So, very, very first, it is not an open world game.
Okay.
The game world is open, but it is not an open world game. I know that sounds weird. It's a linear story that has side quests that can be done in specific branches off from the map, but it's not like in Skyrim where you go to like Riften, and when you're in Riften to do a main quest, there's like 30 quest givers that send you all over the map. It's like during the missions, the story missions, you can like pass somebody and they will give you, they call them favors. They give you a favor. And then you go to a specific portion of the map that they created that you go to do that mission that serves no other purpose. There's also what's called the Lake of Nine, which is where the Temple of Tyr is, that is used as the kind of travel beacon for all of these different realms. In that lake, you travel by boat, which is where a lot of Mimir's stories are told, and you learn different realms, and you can gather different things, light different beacons, collect different things for different people, and do those kind of side missions. So there's like a polyp of open world in a very large swath of linear story. The way they do it, you don't feel overwhelmed, but you don't feel bored. It's not the thing of like, when you play, a good example is the Order 1886, which was another PlayStation exclusive. You can beat that game in 5 hours. There's nothing extra to do. They have like collectibles, sure, but You just keep going. In
Right.
this, they reward you for stopping and going, oh, this like ghost wants me to return his wife's bones, and that will grant me armor. Cool. And the whole game is you craft and you build and you get skill points and stuff. A lot of that you get from doing these favors. You don't have to do them, but to do them rewards you. But again, you don't have to go out of your fucking way to do them. If you explore even a little bit, and Atreus will also say things like, you have a mission that's in the Temple of Tyr, but you get on a boat and start to sail away. And Atreus will say something like, oh good, I did want to look around for a little bit. I'm glad we're not rushing. And it's like, okay. And you never feel like, I should probably rush to the next thing.
Right. Actually, I like that about like the way that you just explained that. That's the type of game that I would want to play.
Yeah.
Is you have a linear storyline, but you have these things that you can go and do. But I get with RPGs, I get overwhelmed really easily with. I'm a completist and I'm a perfectionist, and so it's like, oh, well, I want to do all of it, but you physically can't do all of it in one playthrough. You would have to do multiple playthroughs to get everything.
There are two whole realms of the game called Niflheim and Muspelheim, which are like kind of mini games.
Those sound made up. I think you made them up right now.
Muspelheim is where Surtur, the one who will bring Ragnarok, who's actually in Thor Ragnarok, the giant fire beast.
Surtur, yeah.
It's where he comes from, and Surtur comes from the realm of fire giants, or flame giants, which is Muspelheim, which would normally imagine be hell, but it isn't. It's just a realm of fire. And in that, there are different tiers of different micro challenges, like mini games that you do to see, kill 1,000 enemies. Okay, kill 20 enemies, but don't get hit once. Okay, these enemies are going to try to kidnap Atreus. Don't let them do it. And it's things like that. And you work your way up to the end. Or there's Niflheim, which is the land of mist. And this mist is toxic. And it's the maze that always rebuilds itself. And so you go out and you have a timer. It's like the Safari Zone in Pokemon, if that's a good comparison. You have a timer that ticks down as you run. Eventually this mist will kill you. And you run around and you collect treasure that you can only get there.
Okay.
But if you die, if that timer runs out or you die in the maze, you lose all that treasure and you reset. So it's like a gamble. Do I have enough time to make it to one more section of the maze and then get all the way back to the beginning and claim all this?
Okay.
Or am I going to die? Do I have enough health?
Right.
It's really cool, but you don't have to do either one of those things to play the game.
So the progression is probably pretty linear in any way.
Yeah.
Like, does the fact that the storyline, I guess, keeps moving if you don't do a side quest, do you miss your opportunity to do that side quest, or is that still like...
There is only one instance of that I have seen in progression, specifically the way you upgrade your health. And Kratos, Calvin will immediately recognize the Spartan Rage meter, which is something that you have in this game, where it's essentially as you combat and get cool combos, and the more blows you land, the more your Spartan Rage meter builds. And then you hit the L and the R analog sticks down at the same time, and you go into a Spartan Rage mode, where you can like rip up chunks of the earth and throw them at people, or like bludgeon people to death, or step on them, and it's all insta-kill shit, and it's really cool. The way you build those meters up to increase their maximum is you find treasures in specific chests, which are all mini games. There's 3 runes, and you have to either hit or break all 3 runes, but they're hidden or they're built in a way that you have to hit them in times, and it's really cool the way they work. And so the only example I've seen of you fucked up is in Helheim. There's a cutscene which brings you further into Helheim, then you can travel going back to it later.
Okay.
So you can't get that far out revisiting the level. So if you miss the Horn of Bloodmead, you're fucked. And I missed it, which sucks. I found that out too late. But no, most of it is returnable. I've beaten the game and I'm still doing favors, like little side missions and stuff. And kind of the way you progress is in 3 ways. So you gain experience from doing missions and side missions and whatnot. You gain the experience like that. The experience is used specifically to purchase skills. Atreus has skills with his bow and with his arrow. They do more damage of a certain nature. He can fire more bows. He can fire them more quickly, stuff like that. Kratos, you have skills in his axe use, in his blades use, and in his unarmed use. It's all combat related. And a lot of them are very cool. There are things like if you hit the R trigger to swing the axe and pause for a moment, your controller vibrates and he switches stance, and then continuing to attack, it does something different. He does a different chain of combos.
That's cool.
Really dynamic in a one-weapon system like that. So it's a lot of fun. So experience handles skills. Then a collectible in the game, essentially the currency, is called hack silver, which you take, and then the dwarves, Brock and Sindri, will create you armor upgrades. You can find enchantment stones and increase your armor's capacities in a series of stats like strength, defense, runic, vitality, stuff like that. So different armors will do different things, and depending on your play style, you want to increase certain things, and then your rune stones, you want to do different things. So hack silver helps in that regard. And then you have specialty items. So things like the Horns of Bloodmead for rage increase, or things like it's Frozen Flame, which is something that increases the axe, and you can only find them. It's usually when you defeat trolls, because they're a pretty difficult enemy to take down. When you take them down, they give you this thing. You go back to Brock, he upgrades the axe, which opens up more skill trees, which you then spend more experience points into getting, and it's a really cool system. It makes it feel natural, but then you really feel like Kratos is getting stronger throughout the game. So I love their progression system. I think it works very well.
Dope.
Now, okay, so you power up and power up and power up. So obviously that brings more powers, more experience, but then also more levels of like epicness, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
What are because I know that's like what this series is based on, is just amazing, visceral, violent moments that are just epic.
Right.
What are the big moments like that in this game? Like, what's the biggest? What's the most epic?
Okay, so the most epic moment in the very beginning of the game, well, mostly in the very beginning of the game, you are confronted by a shirtless, tattooed Norse man who will not reveal who he is, that he was sent by Odin, who knows who he is, assuming that basically he's saying he knows that Kratos is a god, which is something that Kratos has been hiding for quite some time. He knows who you are, and he wants to fight. So you start to fuck him up, and you kill him successfully, and then he gets right back up, and he starts fighting you again, and you kill him again, and he gets right back up and starts fighting you again, and eventually you break his neck and throw him down a canyon that you have created by cracking the fucking crust of the earth open. Kratos is extremely strong. The game opens with him chopping down a full-sized, basically redwood tree and shouldering it and carrying it. And this stranger, who they call this character that you killed multiple times for the majority of the game, is just known as the Stranger. Later on, you find him again with a character named Mimir. When you rescue this character named Mimir, you find him again, and Mimir lets you know that is Baldur, who is a brother of Thor. And basically, the game continues. You find out that it cannot feel any pain or die because Freya has blessed him without pain, with all life. The problem is, like Barbossa, his motivation in the first Captain Pirates of the Caribbean movie, he can't die or feel pain, but he can't taste or be happy or have any kind of sensual relationship. He's dead inside. And so Baldur has been driven crazy by this. You inadvertently lift his curse, and then he fights you, and you're fucking him up because you've powered up this whole time. And then basically he goes to kill Freya out of revenge, and you pick him up and just snap his neck again. But this time, the curse is broken, and he absolutely feels it. And you, like, hear the bones snap and the blood pool in his eyes, and you see, like, the life leave. And Kratos just fucking, he's so angry because Baldur tried to kill your son. So he's so fucking mad that he just fucking drops him and turns to walk away. That was the most epic moment. It took the entire game to build to, and it was very worth it.
Did he get a whole bushel of apples?
Whole bushel.
I'm about, like, you brought up Barbossa.
Stuck.
I'm like,
let's go watch that movie.
I'm like almost near tears thinking about Barbossa. I love that dude so much.
You know, his first name is Hector.
I want people hearing this to understand. He actually is tearing up because Barbossa was mentioned.
What would be the most tragic moment of the game then?
There are a handful. Obviously, the main answer would be, for people that have played the game probably at one point, it's probably near that ending as well. You find that Freya has cursed Baldur with all life because she loves him so much and never wants him to hurt. And then you kill her son. And you've built this relationship with her the entire game. She helps you and your son out a lot. Your son loves her. She loves your son. And then you take her son away. And she through tears, and she's so angry, and I swear I will curse you 1,000 times. I'll be your death. And she leaves. And that's not the sad part. The tragic part is Atreus doesn't understand that. Atreus is like, you just saved her life. What the fuck is wrong with her? And then Atreus is basically like, is that what we're meant to do? Because Atreus understands that he too is a god. He's like, is this what gods do? Do they just kill their parents? I don't want to kill you. So that's like the most on the nose moment, I feel. The most tragic moment to me, though, is a little bit more subdued. You do not tell Atreus that he is a god. You try to keep your lineage and his lineage hidden. And so there's a moment where his physiology as a god is fighting with his reality of being immortal. And it basically his body is trying to react more than his conscience can handle, and it starts to kill him. And so Freya takes care of him while and this is what I was mentioning earlier, when you get the blades of chaos to go to Helheim because you need something from Helheim to save Atreus. And he's like, Kratos is about to cry. He's like, what the fuck do I do to help him? I need to save him. And he's like about to kill her and cry, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's emotional for the first time in the entire game. I think that's the most tragic, because he's realized too late that he needs to work a little harder to do the things he should have been doing the entire time, and that reality kind of clicks into place for him.
I don't know, that's kind of beautiful for like such a video game series that
has
I'm
a
sure,
sex mini game in the first game.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that it is hated by so many like conservative mothers because it's so ultra violent and everything, that if you take it by more than its face value, it is a beautiful story about character.
It really, this is a character piece more than a video game. Like the game is a lot of fun to play, but it's gorgeous. Everything, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful game too. It's so beautiful that it's crashing my Gen 1 graphics card, because I have a out of the box like first wave of PS4s back when they were doing the GTA 5 bundle. But yeah, those are the two moments that I think kind of contrast each other, which is funny because they happen right afterwards, which is a good telling. It's a good sign for a game. It's like that's the major climax of the story, and it's both great and satisfying and terribly sad all at the same time.
That's great. I have one more question, and that's mainly about Atreus. I've heard a lot of, I guess, mixed emotions on him. I've seen a lot of memes about him being an awful sidekick character. How true is that? How is Atreus like as a companion, I guess?
So Atreus is a wonderful character. He is a child who has lost his mother and is terrified to show any sort of coping because his father is an emotionless, terrifying presence. And Atreus is very clearly afraid of him.
He's a murder machine.
Yeah, and Atreus has never seen that. He's only ever seen him come and go in the night, and he is terrifying. And so Atreus refuses to show any sadness or grief. And at one point he even says, like, obviously I cared more about mother than you did. And Kratos says the line, don't confuse silence for lack of grief. And so he doesn't understand Kratos at all. He resents Kratos for the way he grew up. And then he's so wise beyond his little kid years. He learns to hunt within the first 5 minutes of the game. And he has to learn that this deer isn't an animal, that it's food. And that these enemies aren't people, they're targets. And he has to learn his God of War's father's way of life. And he does. And he learns it within a couple hours. And then he rejects it. And then he learns it again. And he goes through these stages of denial and acceptance. But he always handles them. He's like the kid that you would dream to have. Because at most, he's like, hey, fuck you. And Kratos will be like, what the fuck did you just say? And he's like, I'm sorry. And he's well behaved. As a supporting character, gameplay-wise, brilliant. Like, on a scale of Ashley from Resident Evil 4 all the way up to Sheva in Resident Evil 5, he's more Sheva. He's brilliant. I like him gameplay, but character, he is the focus of the game. It is Kratos has never done this right, and it's time that he does, and it's beautiful. Atreus is obviously the major supporting character. There are a lot of supporting characters.
Oh, are there?
Yeah.
I actually thought Atreus was the only
kind of
one.
the only other character. Yeah, and that's a misconception. There are a lot of characters in this game. There aren't hundreds. There are maybe 10. And maybe only 5 of them are important. But you have Kratos, obviously main character, his son Atreus, the main story character, and then the supporting character. You have Freya, also known as the Witch of the Woods. She's kind of important. The Dwarven brothers, Brock and Sindri. You have Thor's children, Magnus and I think Modi, I think are their names. They show up and you actually kill one of them and you whip the other one like a little bitch. And you're like, I'll kill you again, bitch. Try me. It's a lot of fun. Their voice actors are all great. I think my least favorite supporting character of the entire game is Freya. I like her a lot, and she has her stipulations to life and to what she will and won't do for Kratos for different reasons. She pisses me off a lot because she's so blinded by family in that moment that she throws all of her convictions away. And I hate her for the same reason that writing is brilliant, which is it makes you feel like, hey, fuck you, lady. I just saved your fucking life 2 times.
Oh, you hate her because pretty much you're supposed to.
You hate her because the writers did her well.
Exactly,
because you love her so much. She's, I feel, my least favorite supporting character because you leave the game with a bad taste in your mouth. There are no bad supporting characters, to be clear. Every character serves a purpose and they do it all well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Freya just does it in a way that it's like, fuck. My favorite supporting character, and this is the one I've been really excited to talk to you guys about, is a character named Mimir, who I've mentioned several times, who is a satyr, and in this game, he's just a guy, and he has horns. That's it.
No goat hooves.
No hooves.
Does he have a musical number?
He does. It's actually the song that Zendaya sings in Greatest Showman.
What?
That went a way I didn't expect.
But
Okay.
yeah. So no, he doesn't have hooves, but he was an informant to Odin. He basically tricked his way into Odin's council and then kept it for a long time. But then Odin realized that he was up to no good because Mimir was too good for his own good and imprisoned his body into a tree. So his body grew into a tree on the peak of the largest mountain in Midgard, and that's where you find him. And he's like, this is terrible. I've been up here for centuries. You need to save me. And Kratos is like, I'm not magic. I can't pull you out of that tree. And he's like, I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to cut my head off because this is a fate worse than death. And if you can bring me back, so fucking be it. And Atreus is like, oh my God, no, we're not going to do that. And Kratos is immediately like, yeah, all right. And he takes his axe and chops Mimir's head off. You take him back to Freya and you're like, hey, I need you to bring this guy back to life. And she's like, okay, I don't like him at all. He's a piece of shit, but sure, I'll do it. So she brings him back. So there is a talking head named Mimir, who is missing an eye, and his other eye is a jewel owned by the giants that give him giant sight, so he can see things that are like hidden messages. But he's missing one of them because Odin also gouged out his eye because Daly would show back up to that mountain peak and torture Mimir. So you chop his head off, and then Freya saves him. So he's this tragic character. He's got this beautiful Scottish accent. He is the wisest person in all of Midgard, so he has these amazing stories. He gives you all the lore of the game. But he's also sassy, and he basically does the joke where you and Atreus will get into fights, and he's like, hey, I don't mean to interject, but like, I'm getting really uncomfortable. I don't want you guys to fight anymore. Then you might be asking how a severed head talks.
Yes.
It's because Kratos has the beautiful idea to tie the head with a rope and hang it from his belt. So the entire game, from a certain point, there is a severed head hanging from your belt a la Lollipop Chainsaw.
I was about to say, Lollipop Chainsaw.
Brilliant.
Mimir's head hangs from your belt, and as he talks, they animated his mouth with the exact words he's saying.
Brilliant.
So there's never that disconnect. You carry a shrunken head. Also, Kratos is terrible with names, because half the game, and this is a meme that you'll see if you're not a fan of this game, Kratos calls Atreus boy.
Yeah, I
the
think
whole
everybody knows that because
game.
of Facebook.
And it's so funny, because it'll be like, Atreus is like, hey, Dad, look over here. I found something. He's like, shut up, boy. Come here. It's just like so angry. And it's like, my name's Atreus. And he's like, what? Come here, boy. And it's so great. But he calls Mimir head. He never calls him Mimir. He only ever calls him head. He's like, head, what does this say? And it's so great. That's the best character in the game. You have Kratos and Atreus, which are these amazing characters, but the best character in the game is the severed head of Mimir. He's great. He's my favorite part of that game.
That sounds great, man.
It's all very good.
That makes me want to buy a PS4
and then level your character in Destiny up and then play Destiny 2 with the rest of us.
No.
How about we just play original Destiny? I like it better.
Unfortunately, yes. We should just play regular Destiny.
Well,
So that being-
I can have a shotgun and a rocket launcher. This is horse shit.
So that being said, I've never played any of the God of War games. Would I be lost if I were to pick it up? Like how?
No. So obviously there's story in the first games that set up the game. There are references made. Things like you see the ghost of Athena, and she appears before you to haunt you. And in Helheim, you're haunted by the ghost of Zeus, who, again, you bludgeoned cathartically.
That's pretty cool.
And there are other moments like you find Tyr is the Norse god of battle, is his name. And it is shown that he traveled all realms. So he was able to go to Sparta, and he was able to go to Egypt, and he met and communed with all of their gods. And in one of his vaults, you find a vase with the likeness of Kratos standing on a pile of bodies, holding the Blades of Chaos. And Calvin will recognize this. That's actually one of the ways a cutscene begins in the first God of War game, is a Grecian statue takes form.
Do they leave it open for a sequel? Like, does it seem like they're setting up another trilogy?
So the way the game ends, and this is the second biggest spoiler, obviously you discover that your son is Loki, son of Laufey of the land of Jotun. But another thing that Kratos discovers that Atreus misses is you pull some fabric, some tapestry that had fallen from the ceiling and laying over part of these hieroglyphs aside, and you see that it's prophesized that Atreus will kill you.
Oh shit.
How or why, it is not concerned. Also, you killed Magnus, but you did not kill Modi. And the coolest way it sets up for a sequel, when you're done, you return back to your home. It's cutscene plays and credits roll, and you walk and you go back home. And when you get home, you have two options. One, you can keep fucking around. Two, you can retire. And it's basically you and your son go, good adventure, and you go back to bed and you sleep. And if you do that, the screen goes to black, and it says many years later. And you hear thunder outside and lightning, and it's pouring rain, and it's terrifying, and you're confused as to what's happening. And Atreus wakes you up and goes, "Dad, someone's outside." And you go, "What? Who is it?" And he goes, "I don't know." And you go and you grab the Leviathan axe and you kick the door open, and there is a cloaked figure, and lightning strikes as he pulls his cloak back to reveal Mjolnir. And Thor has come for you. And then it goes back to black. And it says present day, and you wake back up, and you and your son continue your adventure.
Oh shit.
Dude, I got fucking chills.
They have set it up. They have set it up
Heard.
to once again Kratos. Kratos has done this horrible thing. He has this knack for of pissing off another pantheon of gods that are all going to come for him and his family. And I cannot wait, dude. Like, I picked this game up. It was a Game Informer podcast piece that they had talked about. I had no interest in it beforehand. I was satisfied with the trilogy. Had no interest in the new one. I saw 5 minutes of gameplay and I was like, sold. What's funny is the thing that sold me is the mechanic of throwing the axe and then calling it back.
So, Hermes didn't make Ghost Hermes didn't make an appearance, did he?
Nope.
Damn, that's one of my favorite endings.
I think this goes without saying, but you might as well. Do you recommend this game, PJ?
To people our age, okay, so I definitely recommend this game. I give this game a fucking 10 out of 10, and I really liking things, so I usually rate things pretty high. This is genuine. This is easily the best game I've played this year. Probably the best game I've played in the last 2 years. It may be the best game this year, and there's a Spider-Man game coming out, and I still think this might beat it. It's incredible. I recommend this game to everyone who can actually appreciate a story-based game. If you are the kind of person that needs a Skyrim game with 1,000 hours and always something to do, and if you're the kind of person that really just wants to get in Counter-Strike and knife people and get more loot boxes or Battlefront your way into the next experience, I do not recommend this game. You will be bored. It is dialogue heavy. It is story-driven. If you like a good story, if you like watching and listening and playing, this is the perfect game for you. It's a game that hasn't been done like this in years, and it's refreshing. So, yeah, I definitely recommend it to the right audience.
It's a good download.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Namaste. Okay. I hate to keep being this fucking guy.
What?
Calvin,
What?
why are you holding and talking to an orange rock right now? I want to know why you're doing that.
Is that why
Because
you've been
when
off
I
mic for a while?
went downstairs just a minute ago to pee, okay, I had to take off this This. See what I'm wearing? My new piece of jewelry that I ran home and remember? Okay, right.
a
Got it
lot of
on now.
goals.
Pretty cool, right? Big sweet
big
gold
gauntlet.
glove.
Yeah, it
it's
can't
a
really
big
be
sweet
called
gold
jewelry.
glove. Yeah, look, the 4 stones that I found
That's
are
called
right
a
here.
gauntlet. Now that
Anyway,
we're on the same
right.
page.
Okay.
So
yeah.
look, I put this orange one. Oh, look, all I know is that I reached down to flush the toilet, right? My hand slipped into a weird purple portal, and when I pulled my hand back, the orange stone was just in my fucking hand, and it was all like, "Hey, you should put me in the glove." And I was like, "It's a gauntlet," according to my brother. And then and I don't know how I knew you were gonna say that, but I knew you were gonna say that. And so then I put it in the thumb, and now it's like the only problem is I got this from a friend of mine who lives like super far away. The gauntlet.
Was
and
he visiting from like New York?
Like super far away,
California.
But see, he's got this really big like circle piece here at the top. It's like it's like I'm missing something. I don't know.
Now, I know, based off a lot of the subject matter we've covered in this arc, we should probably be worried. But there's no way there's a 6th one.
It looks damn good on him.
Oh, it does.
That's
You
what I'm
look.
saying.
yeah.
It's just a fashion accessory.
It looks
Tell me
great.
I look good.
Oh my God, you look good.
Beautiful.
Bow to me.
I'm gonna do that, and I don't know why.